Seeing some buying opportunities out there, guys. Let's talk about it. Hello to all my sports card investor, collector, all my collectibles friends. We are moving out of this studio room, so there's barely anything in the room right now, and so I'm trying to kind of make this work on this Friday, on this last day of the week before we do move into the new spot. It's going to probably take a little bit of time to get the new kind of studio set up the way that we want it, but we will get there. And so this will be my last day in this room. A little bit sad, really, kind of.
Do you ever play old school Nintendo?
No.
Well, then what we're about to do may seem strange, but just go with it.
I'm in the video game too!
Nostalgia. There's a little bit of nostalgia after a year being in this room. This is where it all started. So anyway, my last day in this particular studio. If you are new here, we are going to talk about a lot of sports card investing, collecting, a lot of collectibles type stuff on this channel. So make sure you stick around, hit the subscribe button, karate chop the notification bell, as my son or daughter would say. Let's go ahead and get started. All right, guys, we have seen a dip in sports card pricing, not necessarily across the board for every single card. That's not what I mean. But in general, there has been kind of a nice little dip of potential buying opportunity for certain players, especially ones that kind of over the last 18 months have been fairly expensive, depending on kind of, you know, the wave, I suppose, you know, and what I mean by that is there's been times where vintage cards are high, been times where basketball cards are high, football cards are high, and kind of dips that go along with off seasons and different elements that are related to the market. But now we're seeing kind of a healthy little dip here. And I've been buying through. I've been getting kind of on the buying train, and I don't really see that changing here over the next couple of months. I think I'm going to be doing quite a bit of buying because, frankly, there's a lot of cards that I've wanted that have just been out of the price range, but now they're starting to get back down into a range where it looks good. So I'm taking a look at it. I'm also just analyzing kind of different things that I'm doing where I can kind of tweak and improve. First, I want to talk about. For me, I always have been, but definitely more so now, very player focused. In other words, I'm not necessarily chasing, you know, various sets or just a sport for the heck of it. Even if it's, you know, off season or whatever, I'm really zeroed in on certain players. There is some GOAT element, investing in GOATs element to that, but there's also just prospects that I like, that I just continue to believe in, and that I want to kind of focus on as well. There is so much inventory out there. I think the main thing is just to be patient. Be patient because you can blow through your budget really, really quickly. There are so many cards out there, and so keep that in mind. You know, as you kind of pick the players that you're really zeroed in on, and that you like that particular player, unless you're hunting vintage cards. Even in vintage, you have various years, but for rookie cards, for vintage, you might only have one option. But for modern, ultra modern stuff, you've got a lot of options, whether it be rookie cards or second year or first year, you know, Prism or whatever it is for that particular player. So there are a lot of options, and so be patient. There's definitely some panic selling going on. And maybe not panic selling, but maybe just taking profits. And it could also be people that are consolidating certain cards to get into larger ones. But for me, that presents a great opportunity because there are certain players, and you know, when we talk about sets, I mean, I'm looking at, there's different sets that have been very expensive. Prism in general has not been really inexpensive. And that stuff has started to come down. Select, I really am focused heavily on Select courtside and field level. Those are the most rare versions of Select, which is already a fairly rare set, whether that be football or basketball cards. And so I'm looking at those. I'm not saying that courtside or field level are inexpensive. But I'm not necessarily also just looking at rookie cards for the players I like. It might be second year, it might be third year. And I'm also focused in on graded cards. So I'm not necessarily buying raw cards. I'm not a buy it and grade it type person historically. I might do that in the future, but right now I've just been buying graded, selling graded, or buying raw, selling raw. But I think that there's just definitely more of an appetite for graded cards. And then with pricing going up for grading, there's almost just enough out there graded, that I'm comfortable just waiting for graded stuff, and just holding out for the ones that I want. I'm also not sleeping on BGS 9.5 with some nice subgrades, meaning that, it's True Gem Mint where you've got 9.5s across the board, maybe a 10 thrown in there. Yeah, you pay a little bit more of a premium, but I think that it's worth it long term. And then also PSA 9s, PSA 9s, especially for certain sets where population is low for that player that I like. I'm a huge believer in PSA 9s. If the PSA 10 has gotten out of reach, we always kind of talk about that ratio. Has the PSA 9 caught up yet? And if it hasn't caught up yet, then that can be an opportunity. I wouldn't even be against necessarily like SGC 10s. If an SGC 10, is priced to where it's just like, why is this so low? And I understand, people struggle to sell SGC in comparison to PSA, but an SGC 10 is a nicely graded card probably. That's probably a good looking card for it to have got an SGC 10. I don't think that they skimp on their grading. They have a great reputation. They're just, the market just doesn't price them the same way they do PSA cards. But I like SGC if it's the right card, the right player, etc. I think it's important now more than ever to really sharpen those negotiation skills. There are deals to be had if you can buy multiples, if you can, if you're buying a few different cards, if you can see that people are trying to move cards, make a deal. This stuff is not, these prices are not set in stone, and appetites change. Buying and selling appetites change all the time. There can really be some deals to be had if you just are patient and try to work a deal that works out both for you and for the seller. There's a lot going on. And so, like I said, there's a lot of people that are trying to move into goats, or just not necessarily goats, but just more expensive cards. And they're using those, not even lower level. I mean, $500,000 cards to move into a $5,000 or $10,000 card. Those $500,000 cards or $200 cards can still be great cards. So I think that's something to keep in mind. I mean, there's definitely a lot of that happening. And so let's take advantage of it. I'm going to take advantage of it. And I'm definitely in buying mode. The big thing too, guys, is pick the players that you really like, to where if you're stuck with that card and you end up holding long-term, if it was a short-term plan and now it's turning into a long-term plan because maybe, the price hasn't moved on it as much as you would like, if you had kind of short-term aspirations for it to flip, just be happy that, hey, this is a player I love. I'll just wait it out until I can move this card. If that's your plan. If it's a long-term hold, for a lot of these players too, if you're goat shopping, a lot of times either you're goat shopping to flip into higher goat stuff, or you're goat shopping because you're okay because you're going to hold it for 10, 15, 20 years and they're goats. And when I say goats, for people that might not know what I'm talking about, greatest of all time in that particular sport. I'm going to talk more about that. There's one GOAT that I think is being slept on a little bit, if you can believe it or not. And I'm not talking about an outside of the box type sport or anything like that. I'm talking about one that's right in front of our face. I'm working on that video. It'll be coming out probably over the next few days. We'll talk more about that. But guys, thank you very much for joining me today. Appreciate you hanging with me over this last year in this studio room. We'll have a new setup coming up soon. But I will see you again. Have an awesome Friday, you guys. We have made it to the weekend just about, so make it count. Have a good day.